And we have a deal. Hello guys, it's Cordy here, and wow, it's finally done. Seriously, after all the talks and speculation, the big news has finally dropped. Just about an hour or two ago, it became official, and I think the announcement came out roughly 3 hours back. The WNBA and the WNBPA have reportedly reached a verbal agreement on the terms for a brand new CBA, which is a massive step for the league. One of the biggest headlines from this deal is that for the first time in league history, player salaries will be directly tied to revenue growth. That's huge. It basically means as the league grows, the players benefit more financially as well. There are even expectations that we could eventually see $1 million salaries in the future. Now, to be fair, this wasn't completely shocking. A lot of people already felt this was coming, but still, it's a big moment. Okay, Alexa Philippou said, "This deal is going to be transformational. It's going to build and help create a system where everybody is getting exactly what they deserve, and more. Just excited that we can tell our fans that we're going to be back." Okay, after 1 hour, she said this quote, "Engelbert confirmed the extended negotiations avoided any impacts to the 2026 schedule. Training camp is set to open on April 19th, followed by preseason games beginning April 25th and the start of the regular season on May 8th. In the end, the extended negotiations did not disrupt the league's plans, which is a huge relief for players, teams, and fans. Kathy Engelbert confirmed that everything remains on track, meaning the 2026 season will move forward exactly as scheduled. Training camp will officially open on April 19th, giving teams time to prepare and build chemistry. The preseason will tip off on April 25th, offering fans their first look at the new rosters and storylines. Then, on May 8th, the regular season begins, marking the start of another exciting chapter for the Women's National Basketball Association and its growing global audience. Okay, let's take a quick look at the full Alexa Philippou article and see if there's anything we might have missed. Obviously, I'm going to be skim reading through this. If you guys want to read all of this, don't pause the video, just go click on the article and check it out yourselves. So, anyway, progress was made in discussions to take a transformational step forward for the players and the league, Kathy said at 3 a.m. I think it kind of means something. 2 words, player empowerment. Players came to the table standing on business, and it reminded everyone of the collective power of their voice. Both sides declined to share details of the final agreement. The formal term sheet still needs to be finalized, and the agreement is pending ratification by the players, as well as the WNBA Board of Governors. This will be the new CBA, and we're just grateful they were able to come to a deal. I think there's nothing really of note here in terms of exactly what the deal includes, so obviously that does matter, because if we're being real here... So here's the thing. My guess right now is that maybe the players ended up getting somewhere around 20% of the gross revenue. Something like that. Probably a number that's low enough where the league still feels comfortable with it, but high enough where the players can say they actually made progress. And honestly, when you start thinking about how these negotiations usually go, that kind of middle ground wouldn't surprise me at all. But imagine this scenario for a second. Imagine if the WNBA Board of Governors just came back and said no. Like, straight up, just said, "Nah, we're not doing that." Or imagine if the players came back and said no. That would have been chaos. Now, realistically, the players probably aren't going to go against their union representatives. At the end of the day, the union leadership is negotiating on behalf of everyone. If the reps say this is the best deal they could get, most players are going to trust that process. So the players themselves probably wouldn't reject it. But the funniest possible outcome would have been something like this. Imagine if after all these hours of negotiations, after all the meetings, after all the back and forth, the final deal ends up being exactly what the league wanted from the beginning. Like, imagine the max salary ends up being $1 million, the revenue share ends up being 15% of gross revenue, and maybe something like 70% of net revenue, or whatever structure they landed on. If that happened, it would honestly be hilarious in a weird way. Because it would basically mean that everyone spent like 100 hours sitting in rooms, negotiating, debating, arguing, stressing, just to end up exactly where the league originally wanted to be. That would genuinely be one of the funniest outcomes possible. But that being said, the most important thing here is this: there's going to be a season. And that's huge. WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert has already confirmed that everything is still expected to move forward as planned. The league schedule, the offseason timeline, all of it. And honestly, the timing is kind of crazy when you look at the calendar, because we're now heading into what is going to be a very hectic few weeks. First, you've got the NCAA Division I Women's Basketball Tournament wrapping up with the season. Once the Final Four happens and the championship game wraps up, that's when the WNBA offseason really kicks into gear. The expectation right now is that the expansion draft will probably take place right after the tournament ends. The championship game is around April 5th or April 6th, so right after that is when things could start moving quickly. And then, right after the expansion draft, free agency opens almost immediately. So within just a couple weeks, you're going to have expansion decisions, roster moves, free agency signings, trades, everything happening all at once. Because the biggest question teams are going to face right now is who gets protected in the expansion draft. That's going to be the major storyline across the league. The early rumor floating around from some general managers is that teams might be allowed to protect 5 players. If that ends up being the case, every single franchise is going to have some very difficult decisions to make. Take the Indiana Fever, for example. If they get 5 protected spots, the obvious names you'd expect are Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Boston, Lexi Hull, and then maybe someone like Christy Wallace or another rotational piece, depending on the rules. But there's another twist here. Some leagues don't allow teams to protect restricted free agents in expansion drafts. The NBA has had similar discussions about this kind of rule structure before. If something like that applies here, it could completely change the strategy for teams. Because suddenly, you might see franchises losing players that they technically still have under team control. And remember, a lot of players around the league are going to be entering free agency anyway, so you could see situations where teams randomly lose players they expected to keep, or players who were kind of stashed on rosters suddenly become expansion picks. It could get messy very quickly. But overall, this is still a huge moment. There's going to be basketball. Thank God. I wish I could sound a little more energetic about it, but I'm basically running on no sleep right now. Still, I'm genuinely excited. This is a big deal for the league. I cannot wait to get back into the season. I cannot wait to get back to making real basketball videos again, talking about games, storylines, performances, the stuff that actually matters. Because honestly, the last stretch has been exhausting. Talking nonstop about negotiations, deals, revenue splits, and who's stalling the agreement, that stuff gets tiring. But now it's done. Finally. So shout out to players like Brianna Turner and everyone else who spent all that time fighting through the process and getting it over the line. Because now we don't have to keep asking which side is stalling or whether there's going to be a season. There is going to be a season. And honestly, that's the best news possible. Tell me what you think. Don't forget, like and subscribe.